Welcome to the Game Day Playbook, presented by FanFood, a discussion around how leaders are transforming the sports and live entertainment industries by leveraging technology to enhance the fan experience and operate game day more efficiently. I'm your host, Rob Cressy, and joining me today is Kris McCarthy, co-founder and COO at FanSaves. Kris, great to have you on the show.
Rob, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Can you give a quick overview on who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm a true blue Canadian. Grew up playing hockey all my life and had the pleasure and the opportunity to play 7 years professionally in the Federal Hockey League before transitioning into the front office. And it was in the front office where I came across a pain point in the sponsorship industry. You know, my co-founder and I were selling sponsorship, and brands kept telling us that, they didn't want the traditional inventory, a signage or a scoreboard ad, or, a coupon in the game day program that did nothing to drive traffic into their establishment. And, some of these organizations, these brands had sponsored teams in the past and didn't see anything come back in. So we put our heads together and we created a mobile platform that could really activate the fans by offering discounts and deals to the fans from the sponsors of their favorite teams. And that's how FanSaves was born. And 3 years later, we're still grinding hard. It's been a crazy, awesome roller coaster ride since.
So let's dig a little deeper into that, because I like the premise, but activating fans with sponsors is a little bit of a challenge as someone who's on the fan side, because we always know what sponsors want. Sponsors want us to buy something that they're doing. So by design, oftentimes they don't think about the engagement side. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of brand awareness in terms of here's some signage, here's some things that aren't doing much. The alternative is oftentimes the inverse will be buy what I'm selling, buy what I'm selling. Well, guess what? That doesn't really engage me either. So take us into your mindset in terms of how you guys can engage fans on the sponsor's behalf.
Yeah, a big problem that we really noticed right off the bat, and over the last 3 years, every sports fan that we've run into, we've asked them two questions: who's your favorite professional sports team, and how many sponsors of that sports team can you name? 95% of the time, the fan just looks at us with a blank stare. Some of them can name a couple, and very few can name over 3 or 5. So, when fans go into an arena or a stadium, they're so saturated by advertising. They're hearing it, they're seeing it, they're touching it. It's all around you. So when they leave the stadium, they're not really thinking about who the sponsors were. They're really thinking about, like, who scored the goals? Was there a fight? Was there like that big play, right? So a lot of the brands really get lost in the fans' minds after they're outside of the stadium. So we're a platform where we can put all of the sponsors of a team on their page, similar to an Instagram. You go on Instagram, you follow an influencer, you follow a team, an organization, and then you can see all the pictures and content they're posting. It's very similar with FanSaves. You can follow your favorite team or organization. Instead of seeing pictures and content, you're able to see their sponsors who are offering you a discount or deal, which you can redeem in person in the physical brick and mortar location or online. So we're really engaging those fans with the sponsors, and the sponsors are able to collect all of the customer analytics and data, which they couldn't really know from having a sign in the arena and not knowing like who's seeing that sign and who's coming in because of it, right? So we're a digital solution, and with this whole pandemic, it's really put a focus on digital and sports tech. And I think a lot of the teams that are going to be really successful coming out of this are really going to leverage technologies that are out there right now.
And when I think about the sponsors that I remember when going to the games, it's very few, if any. But of sports where I am more brand aware, it is hockey. And why is that? Because oftentimes I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'm a Penguins fan, even though I live in Chicago. If I'm watching a Blackhawks or a Penguins game, I know if they're on their home or road based on the signage on the boards, because that's really the only thing that I notice in terms of what's different. Does it really resonate a ton for me? No, but really that's what it helps identify. And when I think about, all right, well, where do sponsors do a good job of fan engagement? And I think the first and only one that really comes to my mind would be something like Dunkin' Donuts, who has the coffee versus donut versus bagel race. at intermission or halftime of a game or something where we're all sitting there and you're like, all right, pick your number, or look in your program and you're like, all right, I'm going with the donuts, and you get that. Another one would be with basketball, score 100 points and you win a free taco. So those are the type of things where there is a fan engagement. We're all in it together. But here comes the new challenge. There is not a lot of, actually, there's no sports with fans currently watching them right now. So what can sponsors do to engage fans knowing that in arena isn't an option?
Yeah, there's some really cool emerging technologies. I think we're well positioned that in the sense where the fans aren't physically going into the stadiums and arenas, right? They're not seeing all those signages, they're not seeing the scoreboard ads, they're not seeing and hearing those activations that happen during the game. So these teams are looking for ways to digitally connect their sponsors with their fans, their target audience. Obviously, social media is definitely being highly leveraged. Some teams are doing podcasts. Esports is a really cool way that teams and brands are being able to leverage themselves and get to that target market. So I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see the continuation of this digital revolution. I think there's always going to be a place for signage in sports. It's brand recognition. But I think technology will be able to add to that and be a great complement to that. So I think you're going to see a lot of really great, exciting technology firms come out of these next 5 years as teams look to leverage technology even more.
And I agree that it's inevitable the digital side, because I shouldn't have to bring my ticket to Dunkin' Donuts to be able to get my free cup of coffee, assuming that I picked the coffee in at one. Like, that's the next level of it is, all right, we had this great experience right there, but so often we are going touchless, cashless for everything. So me actually bringing the ticket back, well, that means I have to make sure to keep the ticket, put it somewhere where I'm going to go, and then be able to actually redeem it. Where if we thought about the digital side of things, you know what would be really enjoyable is if somehow I had, sort of like Starbucks does, a digital account for any fan that goes to the game that says, by the way, here is your unique identifier. Maybe it's using like an RFID code or something, where nice and simple, low touch, I don't have to download anything, and sort of doing it that way. So I like the concepts of everything in general, but here's one of the challenges that I see, and it is actually the rest of the world and the rest of the digital media. So we can create these hubs for sponsors of teams and say, hey, here's all of our list of sponsors. Come go and see what they've got for you. Well, guess what? I'm not really interested in that, because I'm going to scroll on Instagram and see a picture of some trick shots and something that looks good to eat and a mini golden doodle and people on vacation and things like that. So irregardless of what we think, you're still fighting for attention with the rest of the world, whose goal is to get their attention, your attention on them. So what can be done to build that connection between the sports fan and these digital hubs where these sponsor opportunities or engagement points exist?
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that 90% of millennials use coupons, right? It's something that the younger generation really leverages. I think using other platforms to push people to, their sponsors is so important. Something that's really cool. You mentioned like the ticket. You bring that ticket in and you get a deal. Well, how many teams still use physical tickets, right? It's really decreasing day by day. I think the Baltimore Ravens, or maybe it was the Cleveland Browns, were one of the first NFL teams to go fully digital, right? I think back in the day when, I was a big Senators fan and the Sens had the pizza line with Heatley, Spezza, and Alfredson. And if the Sens scored 6 or more goals in a game, the next day you could redeem that ticket stub for a free slice of pizza. And that's something really similar to what the Toronto Raptors actually are doing and did last season with McDonald's, where if the Raptors scored 12 or more 3-pointers in a game, McDonald's the next day would offer a free medium fry through the McDonald's mobile app by simply going in, clicking redeem, and showing it at the point of purchase. So they actually gave away $2.5 million worth of free French fries. But you think about how many people would have to come in to redeem for a free medium French fry, and how much money they would have made from, maybe that person came in for the fry, but they bought a Happy Meal for their kid, or they bought a Big Mac meal. So I think leveraging mobile technology like we're seeing, and these teams are pushing people to their apps. One of the big things that we're able to do finally, after a few years of development, is be able to integrate into those team and league apps. 5 years ago, mobile apps were not a thing. Every team now has their own mobile app at the highest professional level, and it's trickling down to the minors. So that hub that you talk about, of sending all of their fans to their mobile app, where they have all different types of technology built into that one platform, is really something I think we're going to see more and more of. And using social channels like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and beyond to push the fans to those channels are going to be so important.
And that's actually something that we've talked about a few times on the podcast, because I do believe it's a challenge to get people to download an app. Ask anybody who's ever created a company where they say, oh, download our app. It is hard to get people to do anything, especially download another app on their phone. And the example that we used was, imagine going to a Cubs game in Wrigley. And what is the incentive for someone to download the Cubs app? With us living in Chicago, all right, how many traditionally Cubs games would I go to? Let's call it anywhere between 3 and 10 a year. So I may be on the higher end, so it might appeal to me. But traditionally, how many people are going to more than one Cubs game? And what's the incentive for them? But there becomes a missed opportunity there because they don't get the value, but the incentive to download the app. So what can really be done? And I get that we can drive them from social channels, but also the social channels is a little bit of a deeper relationship. If you're going to a Cubs game for the first time because it's a friend or a family member flying into Chicago to come see me, they're not as incentivized. But to me, that means there's a missed opportunity somewhere to make the ease of transaction or engagement to be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more we build into these team and league apps, the more different types of fans we're going to reach, right? There's like the hardcore fans. Yeah, sure, they'll download the app just because they're a hardcore fan and they want to keep up with their team's content. But you have to be able to reach the not so hardcore fans and drive them to that mobile app technology, right? So that's where a company like FanSaves can appeal to a certain demographic that is really into couponing and wants to support their team but save money. Then you've got the other fans who maybe are into concerts and can purchase tickets to a concert through that team's mobile app at their stadium. All these different technologies, the more we're able to build into these team and league apps, the more appealing it's going to be to all different types of fans, not just the hardcore fans. So yeah, definitely using all the resources available, I think, to push all these different types of fans. You talk about content creation and what content is reaching out to what fan, right? So all of these different elements put together in one platform is what teams should be doing, and we're seeing a lot more of it every day.
What about the ability to use geolocation or geofencing to make this even easier? I mean, I think there's a few different layers on this. One being you're within the geo. So I live down the street from the United Center. Boom, something pops up within your certain radius, almost like the way that Snapchat filters were working back in the day. But also, I think that's a great opportunity. But what if we could take that next level and Dunkin' Donuts with the free coffee says, hey, anyone who was at the United Center last night, we've got that geolocation in there. And now we match that up with our geolocation or any geofence of any Chicagoland Dunkin' Donuts. Where are we on something like that? Because I think the easier we can make it on the fan from a sponsor side of things, the more engagement we're going to get and ultimately more of a conversion.
Yeah, geofencing is great. Targeting those fans that are already in that space to make sure they come back or they're more aware of to what's going on. We're living in a data age, right? A digital data-driven age, and this data is so important for these brands and these teams to know exactly who their fan is so they can target them. The big part of our platform is being able to provide those analytics of the people that are actually engaging and redeeming the deals in store and online. So, a brand being able to know who redeemed the deal. So like age, gender, primary location, all displayed in pie charts. So they can never tell exactly who, Rob Cressy, 34 years old, whatever, right? But knowing those general demographics and know who is coming into their stores is so important. I think it's really, really important for those those teams, organizations as well, to really understand who their true fan is, so that they can be reaching out to those demographics. And geofencing is one of the great ways that they're able to do that.
We talked about the sponsors and how many of them can we actually remember from a sports team. And as I've been sort of marinating on this, one thing that I wrote down is I want to support brands that I like or that are part of the teams, because it just really is. And you think about the brands where you are loyal to and you're like, you know what, thank you for it. And I even think about this past week, my wife purchased something from Lululemon and we had to call them on the customer service. And no joke, it was the greatest customer service person I have ever experienced in my entire life. They ended up sending us a gift card for this thing. And I was like, I want to be part of their world because they are so us. And what can brands do, or sponsors, I guess, to further build that relationship? Because I think, once again, the big disconnect that happens is brands and sponsors are so transactional. And you mentioned social and you mentioned podcasting, but why aren't we seeing sponsors acting or talking more like fans do?
I think, loyalty is a huge factor in why fans support brands. If the fans knew who the brands are that are supporting their favorite team, they're more likely to support them, right? They're more likely to go to McDonald's if that McDonald's sponsors their team than they are likely to go to a Burger King across the street. I don't think like the average sports fan really knows like how big of a budget, how big of the piece of the pie is of revenue every year for these sports teams coming from sponsorship. Without sponsorship, without all these brands that are affiliating themselves with these teams, sports teams would be really struggling. It's a main part of their revenue base, right? So another really cool thing that we're able to do on our platform, we'll be able to do soon, and we're working on development, is creating a reward system. So not only is the fan having that loyalty of being able to support their team by spending money at that establishment, able to save money, but now they're also able to earn rewards points which they can use to redeem for like a pair of tickets or merchandise or something that's offered by the team. So really finding ways to further incentivize the fan to support their affiliated brands is so key. And there's so many great like emerging sports tech companies that are out there among ours trying to do this. So like I said, I think we're going to see a huge increase in these next few years of technologies that are really able to capture the attention of the fan and create that loyalty for them to want to spend money at their favorite team sponsors.
Yeah, and it looks like the opportunity is actually one part art, one part science. So the science part being the tech side where you capture the data and you remarket to them. And it's more the process-oriented thing where you want to get more people in your funnel because you can do more remarketing and it just becomes a percentages side of things. But then there's also the art side where you as a sponsor could get more value out of your sponsorship by being more creative. You say, all right, how can we create our own kiss cam or donut race for our own brand, something that's going to be memorable? Because even though we're having a forward-thinking conversation on what can be done for sponsors to engage sports fans, what percentage of sponsors are actually doing that themselves, as opposed to being, we have a large agency who's just going to be putting this stuff out there and spraying and praying? And I think that right now in the current landscape, the opportunity for the small and nimble and creative and forward thinking and fan engaging brand is the one who can trump the big iceberg because they're slow moving and they think backwards. Whereas the younger one can say, wait a second, we can go and change on a dime and really do something that can add an element of virality or fan engagement virality where people deepen the relationship. And I don't mean virality from 1 million people are doing it, but more on the adoption of something, because that's what we love with fan engagement is if you can get more people to do something. And then I think that's the biggest challenge that sponsors have. We just can't get them to do something. All right, well, let's start with the simplest thing. What's one thing you can do? Can we get them to kiss? Can we get them to send us a picture of a donut? Like, what is that thing? And I believe that's actually where the opportunity is.
That's my favorite part of sports, honestly, from working in the industry, was creating those fun, different, unique activations. Just today, I saw Heineken, I believe it was the NFL, they partnered with the NFL, and they're doing a contest where if you enter this contest, you can win a stadium in a box. So they'll actually send you a box with a stadium seat, a beer fridge stocked, and like a meal delivered to your house during one of the upcoming games. So I think that's so cool. That's something I've never seen before. That's something that caught my interest. And that's what content creation is all about. It's about catching the attention of the fan and creating an activation around it that can really intrigue them. You talk about in-game activations. You go to games. I remember one that stood out to me. I'll never ever forget. It was Bell Mobile up here in Canada in Ottawa, and during like the second intermission, they dropped all these parachutes from the ceiling, and they all had like a fake cell phone. So if you caught one of these parachutes, you could go and you could get like 3 months free, like a phone for 3 months free. And my dad ended up catching one, so I'll never forget that. It was something so unique that I've never seen. But I think those types of activations can be supplemented by technology. You're seeing the rise in sports betting right now. Why is that? Because people are more engaged. It's more fun to watch a game when there's something on the line, whether it's money, whether it's rewards points. There's different companies doing different things, but it just makes the whole experience much more enjoyable when you're looking forward to a hat trick, or you're looking forward to, any activation that happens during the game. I think technology, you've seen it through the fan cam, which is really cool, and all other types of these new activations that are coming out. So I'm super excited to see what all of these professionals can do with technology to supplement those really cool, unique activations they're already coming up with.
And I saw that Bud Light had an activation, and I don't know the exact details of it, but it was something like catch a home run. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea, where they're essentially taking the experience of being in a game, whether it's a home run or a foul ball. And I just sat there without even knowing anything. And I was like, wait a second, that's such a good idea. Anytime there's a home run hit during a game, someone should be sent a ball from Bud Light. What does that cost them? Nothing. They get the person's email, phone number, address, get them on a podcast or video, get them on social media. And now all of a sudden you can completely rethink what the fan relationship and fan engagement looks like, because now you've opened things up to not just people in the arena, but people everywhere. Because now, because there aren't fans in the stands, you say, all right, our audience is now all Blackhawks fans or all Cubs fans. And what can we do to have them part of our digital board, or to send in user-generated content, and to really think more like a media company meets a community instead of thinking like a brand? Because if all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I'm on the Bud Light fan cam every single game for the Cubs games, you're like, I'm going to keep doing that. That's the type of stuff that we need to see more of.
It's those memorable experiences that create raving fans. You look at an organization like the Savannah Bananas. I love to follow them. They've got some really cool things. Their fan first mentality of like creating those memorable experiences for their fans. Life, I just told the story about the cell phone falling from the ceiling. Like, I'll never forget that. And it's so powerful to create these meaningful activations. There's this is an unprecedented time, and we're seeing really, unique, authentic things come from this. So, as we come out, have found these technologies and fostered them into their business plans moving forward, and all the future activations to come.
And shout out to Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas, who has been on this podcast twice, and I highly recommend checking it out. Jesse is one of my favorite people in all of sports because he's so forward-thinking and he is so for the fan. Kris, really enjoyed jamming with you. Where can everybody connect with you?
Definitely, you can check us out at FanSaves.com. You can add me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. And we're on all the major social media channels. It's been really great talking to you, Rob. You're a huge ball of energy. I love catching the podcast, and huge fan of what FanFood is doing as well. So shout out.
Much appreciation, Kris. And as always, I would love to hear from you. Here's what I would like to hear. Give us one idea that a sponsor could do to engage you as a fan. I love that parachute idea because I've never seen that. We're used to the gun cannon, but stuff falling from the sky because all of a sudden it could be raining money. We want to hear your ideas. You can hit up FanFood on Twitter at FanFood On Demand, on Instagram at FanFood App, or on LinkedIn. And as always, you can hit me up on all social media platforms at Rob Cressy.